Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. This is Dr. Mahmoud Ahmed, and today we learn how to write task 1 in the academic IELTS. Task 1 is very much challenging to many people, and today we will try to learn how to deal with it. Okay, the layout. You need to write 150 words in 20 minutes. It's about graph analysis. Task 1 is all about graph analysis. Okay, so what does analysis mean? Analysis means one step further than description, beyond description, beyond mere description. So you are not describing things, you are describing and analyzing. But take care, do not add information that is not included in the graph. We will see this in detail. Okay, one example of a graph is the line graph. In the line graph, how do you know a line graph? You know a line graph by the x and the y, okay? The x and the y. Here you always see development over time. You always see here development over time, either months, years, days, clock hours, whatever. So you always see here development over time, and you always see here, what can you see here? Values that increase as you go up. So this is how you know the line graph. Okay, and sometimes you can see bars here instead of these dots, and you don't see lines, but you see bars. And when you see bars with the development over time, then it is a line graph. Do not get deceived. Do not analyze it as a bar graph. Analyze it as a line graph. One more example is tables. Tables, again, you see values that are distributed in a specific way. Pie charts. In pie charts, one thing you need to know about pie charts is that the overall is 100%. Pie charts always deal with percentages. So the overall sum will be 100%. And then bar graphs. Bar graphs, again, as you see, are bars with values, okay? So how do you write the task? It is like this, an introduction, okay, fairly short, not very short, but fairly short, and then the body, which is the bulk of the writing, and then the conclusion, it's very short, like 1 or 2 sentences. We will do today introduction, and then body, and then conclusion, okay? So to start with the introduction, how to write an introduction. You start your writing with an introductory paragraph of 2 sentences only. Do not add more than 2 sentences, okay? The paragraph should contain a thesis and an overall impression. How's that? This is the template. I encourage you to use this template in writing the introduction. The line graph or the pie chart or the table given illustrates or compares or reports on. You use one of these verbs. Use only one of these verbs. Blah, 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 in or on, and then you mention the time, and then in, you mention the place, okay, and then you say, as an overall trend, and then you describe the trend, okay? Now, let's take an example. The pie chart compares, you see, this is the verb we use here, compares the number of tourists visiting 4 categories of tourist attractions in Britain. This is the place in 1999, time. Okay, and then you mention the overall trend. As an overall trend, they are all almost equal. Okay, another example. The line graph compares, again, this is the line graph, this is the thing given. The G here is capitalized, it shouldn't be capitalized, it should not be capitalized, this is a mistake. Compares electricity consumption in a typical British house throughout the 24 hours in both summer and winter. As an overall trend, electricity consumption in winter is much more than in the summer. So here again, as you see, do not ever forget place, do not ever forget time, do not ever forget to mention an overall trend. Again, this is how your writing is like: introduction, body, and then conclusion. How to analyze a line graph. Now you are done with the introduction. Now you need to start your analysis. How to analyze a line graph. Always remember, line graphs have a start point, an end point, the peak, and the lowest point. These points All must be covered in your analysis. Do not merely describe. When you analyze, sometimes you have to sum up things, okay? But these points, they have always to be mentioned. The start point, the end point, the peak, which is the highest point, and the lowest point. Always remember, we use only two tenses, simple past or simple present. Do not use any other tense in your writing in task 1. Why is that? Because if the graph given deals with a past event, it has time, and if it has time, then it must be simple past. And the other case is that it describes something that happens in a timeless frame. So it's simple present. Okay, you start your writing, your analysis with a start point. Like, for example, in 1990, oil production was, or formed, or made up, or constituted, or reached 200 tons. Look at this sentence. This is a very important sentence. Notice you have to mention time, like in 1990. You have to mention value, 200 tons. This is the value. And you have to mention the unit, tons. I always see people forgetting units. Don't ever forget units. The unit can be tons, the unit can be kilograms, the unit can be million pounds, million dollars. So don't ever forget the unit. Okay, so in the first sentence, mention time, value, and unit. And why did I mention too many verbs here? Was, formed, made up, constituted. Why all these verbs? Because you have to vary your use of verbs, and we will talk about this in this presentation. You always have to change the verbs you are using. One time you say was, the other time you say formed, the other time you say made up, the other time you said constituted, and so on and so forth. So do not use the same verb more than once. Okay, the rule of thumb, don't ever use the same verb more than once. And then afterwards, the production rose, which is the past for rise, sharply until it made up 600 tons in 19. Look at this sentence. It starts with the subject, the production rose, okay, sharply, an adverb, until it made up. I cannot repeat the same verb. Okay, so here, how can you make these sentences? How can you make sentences describing trends or describing what's happening on a line graph? I made up this document so that it can help us illustrate how to write sentences describing line graphs. You start here with a subject, the production, and then the verb, increased or increases. Again, we said we always have to use simple past or simple present, okay? So increased for simple past, increases for simple present. Rose or rises for, again, simple past and simple present. These both verbs, they indicate what? They indicate going up. When you see the arrow moving up, then you use one of these two verbs. What if it moves down? What if the trend is moving down? Then it is decreased or decreases, fell or falls, dropped or drops, declined or declines. Okay, these are the verbs you can use. And then an adverb, sharply, drastically, dramatically. If it's very fast, if it's moderate, then you use moderately or gradually. If it's very slow, you say slowly or slightly. And then again, do not forget values and time until it reached or made up or constituted or formed 300 tons in 1997. Okay, again, do not forget time, value, and unit. Okay, and these verbs, you have to vary your use of verbs. Okay, another way to say, to deliver the same meaning is instead of subject, verb, adverb, you can use subject, adjective, noun, which is this, subject, verb, and then adjective, noun. Subject, verb, there is or there are, there was or there is for the present, there was for the past. Don't forget never forget sharp or drastic or dramatic, moderate or gradual, slow or slight. It should be slight, not slight. Increase or rise, this is the noun. Increase or rise, decrease or decline or fall in production until it reached or made up or constituted or formed 300 tons in 1997. So these both structures are the same. When you say, for example, there was a dramatic rise in sales in the period between 1990 and 1993 by $300,000, there was a dramatic rise. It's absolutely the same meaning as sales rose dramatically. Again, there was a dramatic rise is equal to sales rose dramatically in the period between so and so, in the period between so and so. Okay? So again, subject, verb, adverb, and here subject, verb, and adjective, noun. You can say there is a moderate decrease, which means the production decreased moderately. I will write this down so that you can see it. You can use this sentence. These sentences all have the same meaning. There was a moderate decline. Something here wrong. This is absolutely like, in sales, for example, it means sales declined moderately. So maybe, again, something wrong here. Maybe you need to take a screenshot of this table, okay, and save it to your computer, because this is very important. This table is very important, okay? We'll take more examples. Okay, so this is a very nice example. We can extract many sentences from this graph, from this line graph. Look at the period between 2002 and 2008. This period, 2002, between 2002 and 2008. We call this a drastic increase or a dramatic increase, a sharp increase, okay? There was a drastic increase in energy expenditure in Michigan in the period between 2002 and 2008 by $1,000 million, okay? You can say, instead of by 1,000, because here, look at, it was 8,000, and then it became 18,000, okay? So we can say by $1,000 million, or we can say by $1 billion, okay? Or we can say it increased from $8,000 to $18,000. These are all valid ways to express the same meaning. This sentence has exactly the same meaning like energy expenditure rose sharply. See here, instead of saying there was a drastic increase, you say rose sharply, which means increased drastically in the period from 2003 until 2008, until it reached slightly more than $1,800 million. Okay, got it? These are two different ways to express the same meaning to show this trend from 2002 to 2008. Again, here is the peak. One of the most important points you have to cover in your analysis is the peak. How do you express this in English? You say energy expenditure increased sharply until it peaked at slightly more than $1,800 million in 2008. Peaked at. Again, do not forget to mention the year. Do not forget to mention the value. Do not forget to mention the unit. The unit here is what? Dollars. Okay? Peaked at. Peaked at. This is the verb. This sentence can be expressed in another way. You can say it peaked at instead of reached the peak. You can say reached the peak instead of peaked at. Until it, again, one more thing is until it reached the lowest point at, I don't know what, in 1999. Look at the last line in this page. Until it reached the lowest point at, here in this graph, at about $13,000, okay, in 1999. So 2 points you need to cover in your analysis. The highest point, which is the peak, you say peaked at, and the lowest point, you say until it reached the lowest point at $13,000 in 1999. Sales increased, this is another sentence, I made this up. Sales increased slowly from 10 to 15,000 units per month in June, okay? This sentence is equal to sales increased slowly by 5,000 units in June. So instead of mentioning values, 10 to 15, you can mention the value in another way. You say the difference by 5,000 units. Okay, these sentences, again, have the same meaning. Why am I saying this? Because you need to learn variation. You need to learn how to express the same meaning in different ways, because if you express the same meaning in the same, if you express all your meanings, all your trends in the line graph in the same format, in the same shape, then you are losing marks. Again, if you repeat the same structure again and again, if you repeat the same vocabulary or the same verbs or the same structure, the same format, you lose marks. You have to learn variation. When you say sales increased, it means increased slowly, it means there was a slow increase. Instead of saying, for example, from 10 to 15, you can say by 5. Okay, and again, do not forget units, do not forget time. This is another example. And something very interesting we have to learn here. How do we use prepositions? When do we use at? When do we use in, on? Okay? Use at with the y-axis. Look at the y-axis here. The y-axis, we use at. Always use at with the y-axis. There is nothing else. So you say, for example, peaked at, in this example, 22. Peaked at 22. Reached the lowest point at 3. So always with the y-axis, you use the preposition at. How about the x-axis? Well, the x-axis, as you see here, and all the line graphs always deals with time. So if it's about days, you use on. If it's about months and years, you use in. If it's about clock time, like hours, you use at. So because the x-axis deals with time, it differs. Sometimes you use in, sometimes at, sometimes on. Again, if you look at this picture, it shows you that it is clock time. Then you use at. If it's months or years, in. If it's days, you use on. Okay? Okay, which tense do we use here? Look at this graph again. Which tense should we use here? What does it show? It shows people in a store, okay? The number of people at every hour in the store. So for example, at 10 a.m., only 2 people. At 12 p.m., we have 10 people. At 1 p.m., we have 22 people, and so on and so forth. So what tense should we use here? We should use simple present. Why is that? Because it shows a habit, something that happens every day. What preposition to use in the x-axis? Of course, at, because it's clock time. So we can make a sentence here. The number of customers declines slightly after 3 p.m. until it reaches 3 clients at 6 p.m. Okay, this is an example. Now, what we will do now is writing or analyzing a line graph together to make up the 150-word task. This is the line graph. I want you to have time. Look at the line graph. Understand it first before you start writing anything about it. Wheat exports 1985 to 1990 in millions of tons. Okay? And it shows down beneath, if you look at here, Australia, the blue one, Canada, the red one, and the European community in the green one. Okay? So look at the trends. Try to figure them out, try to understand how they are, and take your time before you move to writing the introduction. We will write the introduction together, and we will write the whole task together now to see how to do it. You start again with an introductory paragraph. The line graph compares the exports of wheat in the period between 1985 and 1990 in 3 regions, Australia, Canada, and the European Community. What's this? Again, if you remember what we said, how to write an introduction, we said you have to start with a thesis. Now, this is the thesis, what the whole task is about. And one thing you have to notice here is you change the vocabulary from the question. The question here says wheat exports, 1985, 1990. Do not say wheat exports again. Do not repeat it. Don't ever repeat the words in the question. So instead of wheat exports, you say the exports of wheat in the period between so and so in 3 regions, Australia, Canada, and the European Community. Then we need to add another sentence about the overall trend to make up the introduction. As an overall trend, the European Community increased its wheat exports, unlike Australia, which decreased them. Okay, this is an overall trend. Only one sentence to sum up all what you can see. So here, what did I say? The European Community increased its wheat exports, unlike Australia, which decreased them. Notice, you have to change vocabulary from the question. Do not repeat the same vocabulary from the question. Time, you have to mention time, 1985 and 1990. Place, Australia, Canada, and the European Community. And the overall trend. Don't forget the overall trend. Then move to the body paragraph. You start with the starting point. In 1985, this is the start point. Australia, the European Community, and Canada were almost equal, ranging from 15 to 20 million tons of wheat exports. Here is the line graph. Here is the line graph. They all started at similar points, okay? How did I describe the starting point? How did I describe this point? This point, how did I describe it? We're almost equal, ranging from 15 to 20 million tons of wheat exports, okay? And then what happened? What happened here? What happened? Look at what happened. How can we describe this, the next phase? A year later, I did not say then or afterwards or in 1986. I said a year later to change the structure. Canada and European Community declined its wheat exports moderately, forming 17 to 15 million tons of respectively at the same time, when Australia managed to increase them slightly to 16 millions. Look at what happened. A year later, what happened? Only Australia increased and Canada and European Community declined. Okay, so this is what we mentioned here. Canada and European Community declined and Australia increased. Okay, you have to group your data. One thing very important you need to learn is grouping your data. In this sentence, I grouped Canada and the European Community together and compared them to Australia. This is analysis. This is not mere description. When you analyze, you have to group data and compare them together, okay? And then what happened? However, Canada increased its wheat exports dramatically until they peaked at 25 million tons. Here, this is the peak. This is the peak, Canada, okay, 25 million tons, which is the highest value ever across the 3 countries. This is very important because, again, you are analyzing. You need to compare everything together. We have here 3 line graphs. We have to compare them together, okay? One thing very easy to do this is to compare the highest point. And I did it here. I said, which is the highest value ever across the 3 countries in 1988, again, mentioned the year, before they declined again sharply to reach the lowest point in 1989 at 14 million tons. So here I have also to mention the lowest point. The lowest point was in 1989 at 14 million tons. Again, you have to mention time, you have to mention value, and units. Don't forget units. And then what happened? What happened? Look at here. What happened here? Then they started to rise drastically again to make up 19 million tons in 1990. Okay? This is what happened here. Drastic rise again in Canada, as you see here, okay? As for Australia, you see in the last sentence, one thing very important, I did not repeat sharply. I did not repeat rise. All the verbs, you can use the verb only once. I used increase before, so here I cannot repeat increase again. I used rise. I used sharply before, so I cannot use sharply again. I used drastically. Don't ever repeat your vocabulary or your verbs, okay? Then what happened next? Australia declined. What kind of decline is this? As for Australia, wheat exports suffered a slow drop till the lowest point in 1990 at 11 million tons, which is the lowest value across the three countries, okay? Which is the lowest value across the three countries. Again, this point is very important because it compares everything together. Okay, you need to create a link between the three line graphs. This is very important to create the link between the three line graphs. Remember, again, you are analyzing, you are not comparing. You are not merely describing, I'm sorry. You are comparing. And then the European community, nevertheless, rose its wheat exports gradually until it constituted 21 million tons in 1991. Okay? Maybe you need to take a screenshot of this image and another screenshot of this image, put them together and try to see how we analyzed them. Okay. Conclusion, we need to add one or two sentences summing up what you said. Look at this and try to sum up the information you said. I suggest a conclusion like, while Canada ended up in 1990 at the same value of 1985, look at Canada, it started here and ended here with the same value. The European community managed to increase wheat exports, okay, the European community, it managed to increase it, okay? Unlike Australia, which failed to do so. Australia failed to increase the wheat exports, as you see here. Okay, so this is the conclusion. In the conclusion, do not add new sentences. Never add new information in the conclusion of any writing ever. Okay, now we will move to the other part of this presentation. We will talk about analyzing bar graphs, tables, and pie charts. Okay, they are all the same. I put them all together because they are all the same. It's all about comparisons. Okay, it's all about comparing values or percentages together. So we use the same concepts, we use the same language in analyzing bar graphs, tables, and pie charts. It's all about what? Comparisons. Okay, this is the keyword, comparisons. You compare values together or percentages together. Okay, you have to use key features. You have to use the highest value, the lowest value, the relative percentages. We'll show this in detail. Language templates includes what? X is the highest or the lowest percentage or the value, the highest value, the lowest value, the highest percentage, the lowest percentage. X is double Y, 20 and 10. Here, look at this. You have to mention the relation, which is double or triple or half or quarter, whatever. And then you have to mention the values also. So two things you have to mention. The relation, again, and the value. Relation, double, half, triple, quarter, whatever, 10 times, 20 times, 3 times, and the value, 20 to 10. This is equal to, this sentence is equal to X, which is 20, is double Y, which is known to be 10. You don't have to say 10 here because this is redundancy. X is slightly less than or more than half or quarter or third Y, 25 to 10. Okay, X is slightly less than half 10. X is, Y. X is slightly less than quarter Y. X is slightly less than or slightly more than half Y. A, B, and C are the lowest percentages, 10, 11, and 12 respectively. Respectively is very important. Respectively means in this order. A takes 10, B takes 11, C takes 12 respectively, and respectively means in respective order. okay? X was almost double or triple Y, 60 to 18. So these are some language forms you can use. An example of analysis. Look at this pie chart. Have a look. Have a thorough look, and then we can analyze it together. It talks about what? Australian household greenhouse gas emissions. When we describe, we have to change this phrase, Australian household greenhouse gas emissions. We have to change it, okay? Water heating, 32%, refrigeration, 14%, other appliances, 28%, lighting, 8%, cooling, heating, 15%, okay? Try to do it together. Again, you start with an introduction, 2 sentences, a thesis, and an overall trend. The pie chart illustrates the emissions of greenhouse gas. Look, I changed here, I changed Australian household greenhouse gas emissions. I changed it into what? Emissions of greenhouse gas from a typical Australian household. Okay, you have to change. If you mention it in the same way, you lose marks. As an overall trend, water heating takes the lion's share from these emissions. Okay, this is the overall trend. Which tense shall be used here? What do you think? Which tense shall we use here? Look at this. Which tense? Simple present. Why is that? Because this is something like factual. Okay, we cannot use simple past. Then move to the body paragraph. The highest percentage of greenhouse gas emits from water heating, 32%. This value is double, which is double the percentage of greenhouse gas emitting from the normal heating, 15%. Okay. The second highest source contributing to greenhouse gas emissions is other appliances. So here I am like making a rank. The highest value is water heating, and then appliances. And don't ever say a value in its own like this. All values must be put in comparison to other values. Any value must be put in comparison to any other value. So when I mentioned water heating, 32%, I said this is comparable to what? This is double what? Double normal heating. And I said the second highest value is other appliances, 28%, which is triple the percentage of both cooling and lighting put together. 3% and 8%. 3 plus 8 equals 11. And this is 28, like triple the 11 in respective order, of course. As for refrigeration, it emits greenhouse gases that is almost equal to heating, 14% and 15% respectively. Okay? Notice the variation of language. Again, you have to vary your use of verbs and adjectives, use of everything. Values or percentages must be stated alongside with comparisons. If you say double or triple and that's it, you lose marks. You have to say you have to mention the value, which is 50%, for example, or 32%, 28%. Do not say the relation like double, third, double, triple, half, quarter, and that's it. You have to mention also the value, 15, 28, 32, and so on. Then the conclusion, to conclude, households in Australia can cut down a substantial amount of greenhouse gases by reducing heating and water heating consumption. Okay, so this is a nice conclusion, one sentence to the pie chart. Okay, do not add new information in the conclusions. Just comment on your analysis. Okay, this is the end of our presentation. If you have any questions or comments, inquiries, anything, you can send me on my mail, Mahmoud Ibrahim 1405@gmail.com. Thank you very much, and I'll see you in the next presentation. Next time we will be talking about essay writing, and it will take a considerable time from us. Essay writing is very important because it's task 2 in the writing, whether it is academic or general. Thank you very much. See you next time.